Right now, you stand at a crossroads. Behind you is everything that's familiar, comfort zones, old habits, limiting beliefs, and excuses that have kept you stuck. Ahead of you lies a new horizon, a new chapter, a new life waiting for you to claim it. But here's the truth: the life you want will not come to you by accident. It requires a decision, a bold, intentional decision to leave the past behind and step into your purpose with courage and conviction. Starting a new life always begins with a decision. Not just any decision, but a bold soul-level decision that draws a clear line in the sand and says, enough. Enough of living beneath your potential. Enough of dragging the weight of your past into every new day. Enough of waiting for someone else to give you permission to change. That moment when you finally decide that your current circumstances are no longer acceptable is the spark that ignites transformation. Everything begins with that decision. One that's not based on how you feel, but based on what you know you must become. The truth is, most people never start a new life because they wait for external change before making an internal commitment. They wait for more money, a better job, a more supportive environment, or the perfect timing. But those things are illusions. They rarely come. And even when they do, they change nothing if you haven't made the internal shift first. Life doesn't give you transformation on credit. You pay up front with a decision backed by discipline. You must decide that no matter what, you will no longer allow yourself to live a life of excuses, fear, or regret. That decision doesn't require fanfare or drama. In fact, it often happens in quiet moments when you're alone, reflecting on the gap between where you are and where you know you could be. It's in those moments of brutal honesty with yourself that you come face to face with the reality of your life. You realize that comfort is the enemy of progress, and you cannot afford to stay where you are any longer. You recognize that the pain of staying the same has finally become greater than the fear of changing. But don't confuse decision with desire. Everyone wants a better life. Everyone wants freedom, joy, and success. But not everyone is willing to decide in such a way that every action, every thought, and every word lines up with that new direction. A true decision means cutting off every possibility of going back. It means removing your exit strategies and destroying your backup plans that have allowed you to stay comfortable and stagnant. When you truly decide, your mindset shifts. You stop entertaining the old version of you. You bury it. A real decision is often uncomfortable. It demands sacrifice. It may cost you relationships, routines, or the temporary approval of others. But the cost of staying the same is always greater. The moment you decide, your standards rise. You no longer tolerate what once felt normal. You begin to measure your life not by what's easy or convenient, but by what aligns with your purpose. And that alignment starts creating a pull, an internal momentum that draws you toward the person you were meant to be. That kind of decision redefines your identity. You stop saying, I want to change, and you start saying, I am changing. You stop describing yourself based on your history and start defining yourself based on your destiny. Your language shifts, your posture shifts. You carry yourself with quiet authority because your future is no longer up for debate. You don't need applause or approval. You've already voted for yourself with your decision, and that vote counts more than anyone else's. The world doesn't respond to indecision. It responds to clarity and conviction. When you make a real decision to start a new life, you begin attracting different opportunities, people, and outcomes. Not because the world changed, but because you changed. Your energy changes. Your expectations change. Your habits begin to reflect your new direction. You're no longer asking if you'll succeed. You're focused on how and when. That shift, though invisible to others at first, is the very thing that shapes visible results over time. Every story of transformation starts with this internal pivot. It's not about being ready. It's about being resolved. It's about deciding that your past doesn't get to write the next chapter of your life. That decision is the gateway to freedom, but it can't be borrowed from someone else or copied from a motivational video. It must come from within. It must come from a place of truth so deep that even when you're tired, scared, or uncertain, the decision still holds. Because that's what real change is built on, not hype, not hope, just a decision. Before anything outside, you can change. What's inside must shift first. Your mindset is the thermostat for your entire life. If you keep it set to limitation, fear, and doubt, you will never rise above it, no matter how hard you work or how much you desire success. To start a new life, you must first renew your mind. That means identifying and eliminating the thoughts that have been holding you back, replacing them with new beliefs rooted in truth, faith, and possibility. It means understanding that your old way of thinking cannot take you into a new level of living. Many people sabotage their own transformation because they continue to define themselves by past experiences, past failures, and the labels others have put on them. But you were not created to live your life inside someone else's limitations. You are not your mistakes. You are not your upbringing. You are not your circumstances. Your future is not confined by your past unless you keep rehearsing it, reliving it, and repeating the same thoughts that created it. A new life requires a new lens, and you must be bold enough to see yourself differently before anything else can change. Renewing your mind isn't a one-time decision, it's a daily discipline. Every morning, you have to choose what thoughts get to live in your mind. You have to guard it like a gatekeeper. If fear shows up, you question it. If self-doubt starts whispering, you speak back with confidence. You don't allow your mind to run on autopilot, repeating the lies you've heard or the doubts you've believed for years. You take back the power to author your internal narrative, one thought at a time, because your thoughts shape your beliefs and your beliefs shape your behavior. This is why some people stay stuck for years. They try to change their habits without changing their mindset. They try to change their results without addressing the root of their self-image. But no matter how hard you push yourself, if deep down you believe you're unworthy, undeserving, or incapable, your results will always collapse under the weight of those beliefs. You cannot outperform your identity. And your identity is the fruit of your dominant thoughts. That's why the work of transformation always begins in the mind. What you feed your mind is what it becomes. You can't expect to grow if you keep nourishing your thoughts with negativity, gossip, fear-based media, and conversations that keep you small. You have to elevate what enters your mind the same way an athlete watches what enters their body. Read things that challenge your thinking. Listen to voices that call you higher. Speak words that reflect the future you're stepping into, not the pain you're leaving behind. Your mind is soil. Plant something worthy of your future. Part of renewing your mind is also learning to forgive yourself. Too many people are imprisoned by guilt and shame. They replay moments they can't change, carrying emotional baggage into every new opportunity. But a new life cannot flourish in the soil of self-condemnation. You must declare your past forgiven, not just by others, but by yourself. Release yourself from the prison of perfection. You made mistakes, yes, but you're not a mistake. The person who made those choices no longer exists. if you've chosen to grow. Renewing your mind means rewriting the story you tell yourself about who you are. This process is uncomfortable, even painful at times, because it challenges the familiar. It forces you to confront thoughts that have lived inside you for years. But you can't start a new life with an old mindset. Growth requires new mental muscles. And like any muscle, those must be trained, stretched, and broken down to grow back stronger. You will feel resistance. You will hear the voice of doubt. But you must remind yourself daily, you are not your fear, you are not your past, and you are not your limitations. You are what you choose to become. And the most powerful choice you can make each day is to think from your future, not your history. Ask yourself, what would the strongest version of me think about this situation? What would the most confident, clear, purpose-driven version of me believe right now? That's how you shift. That's how you rise. Because when you renew your mind, you change your perspective. And when your perspective changes, your entire world begins to realign with the person you were always meant to be. Transformation is not a lightning strike. It's a daily decision. A new life is not built in a moment of inspiration, but in the quiet, consistent steps that follow it. The big shift doesn't come from one massive leap. It's the result of small, often unglamorous actions taken over and over again. These actions might seem insignificant in the moment, waking up an hour earlier, choosing discipline over distraction, saying no to an old habit. But they are the seeds of permanent change. It's in those daily choices that you begin to shift the trajectory of your life. The mistake many people make is waiting for motivation before they move. But motivation is fleeting. It rises and falls like emotion. What creates results is consistency, doing what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not. This is where real power lies. Because anyone can act when it's easy. Anyone can commit for a day. But lasting transformation belongs to the person who keeps showing up, especially when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or uncertain. Consistency builds credibility, not just with others, but with yourself. Every time you follow through on what you said you would do, you cast a vote for the new version of yourself. And those votes add up. They shape your identity. They tell your brain, this is who I am now. Consistency is how you reprogram your subconscious. It's how you prove to yourself that you are no longer defined by the habits and patterns of your past. The more you keep your word to yourself, the stronger your belief becomes, and belief is the engine of every great achievement. Starting a new life requires that you shift your focus from outcomes to actions. Don't obsess over how far you still have to go. Instead, master the step that's right in front of you. Excellence doesn't come from chasing results. It comes from committing to the process. When you commit to becoming excellent at the process, the results will take care of themselves. The person who focuses on the process becomes unshakable because they understand that their growth is not tied to speed. It's tied to discipline. There will be days when it feels like nothing is changing, days when progress seems invisible. But change is not always visible at first. It's like a seed breaking open underground. You don't see the roots forming or the soil shifting, but something is happening, something powerful. And if you stay consistent long enough, what was once buried will begin to break through. The world will call it sudden success, but you'll know the truth. It was the reward of relentless, invisible work. Consistency also demands that you learn to love repetition. The world glorifies novelty, but mastery is born in repetition. Champions do the same things over and over again, not because they are easy, but because they are necessary. When you embrace the grind, When you commit to the fundamentals, you begin to sharpen your skill, your focus, and your endurance. It's not about doing new things all the time. It's about doing the right things until they become part of who you are. The power of small choices cannot be overstated. One choice to wake up early leads to a day of clarity. One choice to read instead of scroll shapes your thinking. One choice to exercise instead of making excuses strengthens your body and your discipline. These choices compound. Day by day, they build momentum, and momentum is a force. Once it's in motion, it pulls you forward with less effort. But momentum cannot exist without consistency, and consistency is built one intentional choice at a time. If you want a new life, don't just dream it, build it. And building requires daily effort. You can't build a life on weekends. You can't create change by being consistent only when it's convenient. True transformation requires a standard, a rhythm, a resolve. It requires waking up and deciding again and again that you will not settle for anything less than progress, not perfection, not comfort, because the person who chooses progress every single day is the person who ultimately creates the life others only talk about. The people you allow into your life are either fueling your future or feeding your fears. You cannot start a new life while keeping the same circle that clings to the old you. The environment you live in, the conversations you entertain, and the energy you absorb all shape who you become. If you surround yourself with people who constantly complain, make excuses, or settle for average, it becomes nearly impossible to rise above that mindset. Not because you don't have the potential, but because your surroundings are reinforcing mediocrity. Change is uncomfortable, and those who are afraid of change will often resist yours. When you begin to shift your mindset, your habits, your goals, people who have known you as one version of yourself may feel threatened. They might question your intentions, mock your ambition, or remind you of your past mistakes. Not because they're evil, but because your growth challenges their comfort. Your elevation exposes their stagnation. And if you're not careful, you'll shrink yourself to maintain relationships that are quietly sabotaging your future. You must get serious about your inner circle. A new life demands a new standard for connection. You need people around you who speak life into your vision, people who stretch your thinking, challenge your excuses, and celebrate your progress, not just your perfection. You don't need people who only like the convenient version of you. You need people who hold you accountable to the highest version of yourself. That's not judgment, that's love. Real support doesn't let you stay stuck. It calls you up, not just cheers you on. Sometimes the most powerful growth move you'll ever make is separation. Not with anger, not with arrogance, but with clarity. You're not better than anyone, but you've made a decision to become better than the person you were yesterday. And to do that, you may have to love some people from a distance. You may have to say no to invitations, limit certain conversations, and even walk away from familiar places that no longer align with your purpose. Growth requires boundaries. And boundaries are not walls. They are doors that decide who gets access to your energy. New associations bring new perspectives. When you surround yourself with people who think bigger, believe deeper, and live with intention, it rubs off on you. You start to see possibilities where you once saw problems. You start to elevate your language, your standards, your goals. It's not about imitation, it's about inspiration. You don't need to copy anyone. But being in the presence of greatness reminds you that greatness is possible for you, too. It stirs up what's already inside you and gives you permission to expand. Many people try to start a new life while staying deeply connected to an old network. It rarely works. Your environment is like soil. Even the healthiest seed will wither in toxic ground. You have to choose an atmosphere that nurtures your vision. That doesn't mean everyone around you has to be perfect or successful, but they must be committed to growth. You want to be around people who are moving forward, not people who are constantly justifying staying stuck. Progress is contagious, but so is complacency. Some of the most important breakthroughs you will ever experience will come through relationships. A conversation with the right person can unlock a solution you've been searching for. A mentor can give you clarity in 1 hour that would have taken you years to discover on your own. The right community can keep your fire lit when life gets hard. That's why who you associate with is not a casual decision, it's a strategic one. If you want to build something extraordinary, you need to walk with builders. If you want to heal, you need to walk with people who carry peace, not drama. Your circle must match your commitment. You can't be serious about growth while spending your time with people who are serious about gossip. You can't chase vision while being surrounded by people who chase distraction. Who you allow into your space will influence your pace. So choose wisely. Protect your environment like it's sacred, because it is. Your future depends on it. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's a prerequisite. No one builds a new life without stumbling. The people who rise to greatness are not the ones who never fall, but the ones who refuse to stay down. They understand that every setback contains a seed of wisdom, every mistake a lesson in disguise. Failure is a mirror. It doesn't define you. It reflects the parts of you that still need refinement. When you shift your mindset to see failure as feedback instead of finality, you give yourself permission to grow without shame. Many people stop because they misinterpret failure. They think a failed attempt means they're not capable. They think rejection means they're not worthy. But failure doesn't speak to your identity. It speaks to your approach. It's not telling you that you're broken. It's showing you where your current method needs to evolve. Too often, people let one failed launch, one broken relationship, or one wrong decision cause them to retreat completely. But the new life you desire cannot be built by someone who gives up easily. You must be willing to fail forward. Every successful person has a private history of disappointments that most will never see. The difference is they didn't let those moments define their story. They used them as fuel. They sat with the pain, extracted the wisdom, and stood back up with greater clarity. If you want to start a new life, you must develop that kind of resilience. You must become someone who sees failure not as a stop sign, but as a signal to adjust. That attitude transforms every struggle into a stepping stone. What once broke you now builds you. Resilience is not natural for everyone, but it can be developed. It's trained in the moment you choose to get back up after life knocks the wind out of you. It's strengthened every time you decide that your past disappointment won't have the final word. Resilience isn't about being unbothered. It's about being unstoppable. It's about taking the hit, feeling the emotion, but refusing to be paralyzed by it. Your ability to start again after failure is the mark of someone who is truly serious about change. There's wisdom hiding in every defeat. Sometimes the lesson is practical, what not to do next time. Other times, it's internal, an area where your character needed to mature. But you only gain that wisdom if you stop running from the pain and start learning from it. Most people repeat their failures not because life is unfair, but because they didn't take time to reflect. They rushed past the discomfort instead of asking, what is this trying to teach me? But when you humble yourself to the lesson, failure becomes a gift. There will be moments on your journey when things go completely wrong despite your best efforts. You'll put your heart into something and watch it collapse. You'll trust someone and end up betrayed. You'll work hard and still not get the outcome you expected. That's when you have to decide whether your commitment is tied to comfort or to your calling. If your dream is real, it will demand perseverance. You'll have to keep going even when you don't feel like it, even when it hurts, even when no one is clapping. Starting a new life means becoming a student of your own experience. It means embracing the process, not just the victories, but the bruises. Some of your most valuable growth won't come from books, podcasts, or seminars. It will come from the hard moments that force you to dig deeper than you ever have. The fire that tries to consume, you can also be the fire that purifies you if you let it. The detours that frustrate you today may become the very path that leads you to your purpose. You don't need a perfect track record to change your life. You need grit. You need perspective. You need the courage to keep trying. What separates the person who transforms from the one who stays stuck is not luck, talent, or even opportunity. It's the refusal to quit. It's the decision to face every failure and say, this is not the end of my story. It's the part that makes the story worth telling. A faith is the foundation of transformation. Not just belief in a higher power, but belief in possibility, belief in purpose, belief that you are not here by accident and that your life carries a meaning beyond what you can see right now. When everything around you says, stay where you are, it is faith that whispers, keep going. You can't build a new life if you're chained to what's logical, what's predictable, and what's safe. There will come a moment where you must take a step without having all the answers, without having all the money, without knowing how it's all going to work. And that's when faith becomes your strategy. Faith isn't about denying reality. It's about not being confined by it. You can acknowledge the struggle, the lack, the uncertainty, while still believing that something greater is ahead. Faith sees beyond facts. It knows that what you're going through doesn't have to be permanent. It allows you to see doors where others see dead ends. It pushes you to prepare for the promise even before it arrives. Without faith, you will talk yourself out of opportunities, shrink your vision, and settle for less than what was meant for you. To start a new life, you must choose to walk by vision, not by sight. What you see right now may not match what you desire. Your circumstances may scream contradiction. But vision speaks from the future, and faith is what allows you to align with that future. This doesn't mean you ignore your present. It means you use your present as fuel to step into a higher reality. It means you begin to speak differently, act differently, think differently. Not based on where you are, but based on where you're going. Faith gives you the courage to dream again. It resurrects parts of you that have been buried by disappointment. When you've failed enough times, your mind starts to protect you from dreaming. It tries to convince you to be realistic, to settle, to stop getting your hopes up. But faith is reckless in the best way. It dares you to want more, even when wanting more has hurt before. It helps you break free from survival mode and step into creation mode. It turns pain into purpose and loss into launch pads. When you operate in faith, you begin to take action like the outcome is guaranteed. You show up with excellence. You invest with confidence. You plan like success is inevitable. That's not delusion. That's alignment. Because the way you carry yourself changes when you believe the future you desire is already on its way. You're no longer desperate or panicked. You're expectant. And that expectation becomes a magnet for opportunities, people, and resources that match your energy. There will be moments when nothing looks like it's working, when your effort feels unseen, your prayers feel unheard, and your progress feels invisible. That's where many people give up, not because they don't have the ability, but because they lost faith in the outcome. Starting a new life requires endurance in those silent seasons. You must learn to trust the unseen. You must believe that just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. You may not control the timing, but you do control the seed you plant. Faith is planting it anyway. Faith also demands obedience to your inner convictions. Even when others don't understand, people may question your decisions, your discipline, your direction. But when you know you're being led by something greater, you don't need everyone to understand. Faith sometimes means walking alone. It means moving without validation. It means building when others are sleeping, preparing when others are partying, and believing when others are doubting. It means living with the awareness that your future self is counting on your present courage. The most powerful breakthroughs often come just beyond the point of resistance. That's where faith stretches you. That's where you stop leaning on your own strength and start tapping into something deeper. When fear shows up, faith reminds you that you are not finished. When delay tries to discourage you, faith tells you that delay is not denial. When the path is unclear, faith becomes your compass. Not because everything is easy, but because you've decided that what's ahead of you is greater than what's behind you.